So I wasn't the biggest fan of the Jack Reacher movies with Tom Cruise, but was hopeful when the new Reacher series was announced for Amazon Prime. The actor that they've chosen is huge and menacing and is able to bring the beat down. But does the story also get a beat down in this show? When retired military police officer Jack Reacher is arrested for a murder he did not commit, he finds himself in the middle of a deadly conspiracy full of dirty cops, shady businessmen, and scheming politicians. With nothing but his wits, he must figure out what is happening in Margrave, Georgia. Alright, so this is one of those bad cop shows that you know is bad, but I still somehow got sucked into the melodrama. The first episode really took a lot of patience to get into. Alan Ritchson, who plays Reacher, was overly stoic, but also awkward in his acting. But about 40 minutes in, I began to warm up to him. Now, I'm not sure if the character just began to click with me or if I had just gotten used to his weirdness. One thing that I really like is how blunt and no-nonsense Reacher is. He has basically turned off his filter and he just doesn't tolerate any BS. He's also not one for small talk, so he just says exactly what he's thinking. Now, I like what that does for the dialogue in the show. I mean, it's blunt, but it's oddly humorous. In one scene, he's having a conversation with the dude who says, "I'll ruin your life with one phone call." And Reacher responds with, "I'll end your life with one phone." I mean, sure, it's cheesy, but it fit perfectly. It was exactly the response I had now come to expect from him. Now, there are a fair amount of plot conveniences built into this show. After getting wrongfully arrested for murder in the small Georgia town, Reacher works his way into helping in the murder investigation. I mean, the way that he does this closely mirrors the way Alyssa Milano did it in that awesomely amazing Netflix movie Brazen. The obviousness of this whole show is really bothersome. I mean, especially because it's 8 episodes that are each around 50 minutes long. So it's a lot to endure as the case slowly reveals itself. But these aren't really reveals because the mystery isn't obscured very well at all. Some of the characters are ridiculous archetypes, like the mayor of the Georgia town, who walks around with his golden cane topped with a diamond-looking crystal that he'll occasionally breathe on to polish. And then, to amp it up even more, he brings on that deep southern drawl. It's just like molasses just sort of spilling out of your mouth. The action in this show can be fun, and sometimes the scenes stay on the frame long enough to actually get a good look at what's going on. There are other times, though, when the cuts are quick and numerous, which then makes the fights less immersive. But the overall violence is really what this show has going for it. I mean, while it's not an action series, when the show wants to employ violence, it's not afraid to show some brutality. I mean, some of the scenes were actually pretty impressive with how they show bones breaking and people being finished off. The dialogue in this is a whole mixed bag of cheese and drama. I mean, sometimes I was going along with what the characters are saying and I was engaged, and then they just drop some massively awkward lines where I didn't know whether to laugh or just pick my jaw up off the floor in disbelief that such ridiculous words were written for the characters. And there are also some lines that just work to insult the audience's intelligence. I mean, it's like Captain Obvious was there in the writer's room and told them to insert lines here and there. A couple of times Reacher and his de facto cop partners unveil facts and decode their meanings, but the way in which those explanations come would have been delivered more effectively and convincingly by Shaggy and Scooby. Ruh-roh. Now the cast works well for what they're given. I mean, they're more dramatic than I think they need to be, but when you listen to the dialogue, it all fits together. Malcolm Goodwin and Willa Fitzgerald make good partners with Richardson's Reacher. Their dynamic grew on me, and I was sucked into them just like I was with the bad melodrama. I mean, it also helps that I really liked Goodwin when he was in iZombie, so to see him here was a nice surprise. But the one casting choice I absolutely loved was Harvey Guillen. If his real name doesn't ring a bell, maybe you'll recognize him as Guillermo, Nandor's familiar in What We Do in the Shadows. Now, I liked his portrayal of a small-town medical examiner who was wildly uncomfortable with the large amount of murders that are now befalling his town. The obviousness of all of this show is pretty aggravating, and there is such a high level of predictability to the story. And that isn't something that always bothers me, but I invested nearly 8 hours into this supposed mystery, and they can't even bother to give me satisfying twists and turns? No, and then when the reveal comes, the writing insults us even more by the villain monologue, who painstakingly details everything that we already know. All that was missing was the dong-dong-dong of music right before they're done explaining. So overall, Reacher is a by-the-numbers, over-obvious murder mystery that relies on having some brutal violence to add excitement. Most of the acting is stiff, but it did grow on me, and I've got to hand it to the actors for delivering the cheesy and ridiculous lines with straight faces. While I'm all for a melodramatic mystery, there has to be mystery with that melodrama. The show takes way too long to uncover what we can already guess from the very beginning. And even though the motive is the biggest question in this, it's not so exciting or engaging to keep you on the edge of your seat. The character of Reacher is intriguing, and I like how menacing this current iteration can be, but I think if this series is to continue, the story needs to be a tighter and better hidden mystery. There's sex, nudity, a lot of profanity, and a ton of violence. The more I think about this, the more I just get disappointed with the show. I give season 1 of Reacher 1.5 out of 5 couches. I mean, my score didn't start out that low, but that's just what it is now. So are you a fan of the book series that this is based on? Have you been excited for this show to come out? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.